Hello, everybody, and welcome to Office Hours. This is episode number 49 of the show. What is the show? Well, hopefully I know. You may not. 49 episodes in, and maybe this is your first episode. I don't know. It doesn't matter. They're non-sequential. So you could watch episode number 49, and then number 42, and then you could jump into the 30s. It doesn't matter. What we're doing, what this whole jam is about, is role-playing games. We are talking about tabletop role-playing games. More specifically, I am giving advice to the fine game masters of the universe who have submitted those questions to me via my website at www.adam-koble.com. There's a little link. It says Office Hours. As you might expect, clicking that link will direct you to a place where you can ask questions. So I've been working through these questions 3 at a time. This is episode 49, which, if you can math, is a fair number of questions. Though one time we cheated, we only did one question. Today, we've got some questions about economy. We've got questions about an ancient evil. And we got a question about how to be a good game master when your players want not to hang out with each other. Yeah. So, let's get started. Our first question today comes from Von Ballamore, and it's about magic items.
How to create a magic item building system in which you would have to gather special ingredients to make the item. How to make it interesting and not as a cumbersome thing.
Bam. Straight up to the point. Quick question. Magical items. So, as with a lot of these questions, we're going to start with Dungeons and Dragons, and then we're going to expand out from D&D, because I think, generally speaking, a lot of these questions, a lot of the time, people come at this stuff from a position of, like, I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons. Ergo, I have a Dungeons and Dragons question. So I'm going to start by answering that, and then we'll talk about other systems and how magic items might work then. But when we're dealing with a game like D&D, magic items tend to be a part of the reward structure and the economy of success in the game. Now, I'm not just talking about D&D particularly, but the style of game that D&D is, right? We're talking about Dungeons and Dragons. We're talking about Pathfinder. We're talking about, to a degree, Dungeon World, Torchbearer, really any game in which you are playing that group of people who are delving into a dungeon or bad environment. You are murdering monsters, you're getting treasure, etc., etc. So that economy structure is what I'm going to address most particularly here. And what's interesting is that I think that a lot of players are familiar with this economy because of World of Warcraft. And other MMOs, but World of Warcraft learned this economy and really ground it down to its core by playing Dungeons and Dragons. World of Warcraft and Dungeons and Dragons mechanically have so much in common. This is one of those things, right? The World of Warcraft model, the MMO model of gear, is that you kill monsters to earn gear, to make you better at killing monsters, so that you can earn better gear, so that you can kill bigger monsters, so that you can get better gear, so you can kill bigger monsters, so you can get better gear, and kill monsters and get gear, so that you can kill monsters. And then you kill those monsters and they drop gear, etc. Dungeons and Dragons is a bit like that as well, except sometimes we don't want to kill monsters to get gear. The reason for that is that sometimes we don't want to run the risk that the monsters will drop another +1 scimitar when nobody in the fucking party uses scimitars, right? We want a system that gives us more control over the gear we get. So yes, we could chase down rumors about +2 scimitars, or magic longswords, or whatever particular gear that we want, right? We could spend time in town. We could spend time looking up rumors. We could search for these items in the world, right? Or, as players, invariably, we could look at a group of rewards that we are given that are not treasure, right? We can look at this grouping of other rewards. And how can those get us treasure? Well, We have gold, right? We've achieved gold as a secondary value item, a colossal amount of wealth we've amassed. But what can we spend that on in our game, right? We can spend it on the Waterdeep real estate speculation game, or we can buy full plate armor. But once all the warrior types in the party have full plate and we've bought ourselves a base, and if we're not playing a game that supports building up around the character and not just building the character, I'm thinking of stuff like Adventurer, Conqueror, King in this case. But generally speaking, we don't have anything to spend the money on, right? Every game, eventually, the players are like, I have too much cash. Let's ask the players what they want to spend their money on, and they're going to come to us and they're going to say magic items. Right? They're going to look at us and they're going to say magic items. And we as game masters are going to have to say, no, sorry, friend, you can't. You can't spend money on magic items. That there is a non-permeable barrier between gold and magic directly, right? So we look at the other things that we gain. We look at experience. And so we start to think, okay, maybe as my character improves, I'll have more opportunity to purchase magic items, right? We can go to another town. Let's go to the big city. Right? And even in the biggest city, there's not going to be a magic item bazaar, because that's just the way that the game is written. Dungeons and Dragons, particularly in most versions of D&D, it's just not a thing. We have too great a supply of cash, and we have nothing to spend it on. Even at higher levels, even if we travel to another plane, the chances of just straight up buying an item doesn't work. So we get this idea. We say, perhaps we can pay a wizard, an NPC. We could pay them to craft an item for us. Or engage in one of the sometimes available subsystems at hand. And fuck it, I'm a wizard. Let me make this magic item myself. And so when we get there, when we either say, yon wizard, will pay you to make us a magic item, or we say, let's make it ourselves, the narrative just bends right back. And this is great, because this is the game telling you, stop fucking playing Magic Item Merchant and go play D&D. The narrative gets all adventure-y again, because even as written, and this is a quote from the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons DM guide, speaking to the DM, because the whole book is written that way, you can decide that certain items require special materials or location to be created. For example, a character might need alchemist supplies to brew a particular potion, or the formula for a flame tongue might require that a weapon be forged with lava. And so here we are at the beginning of a quest, right? Instead of saying, let's go fuck up a bunch of dungeons till we find the stuff we need, the PCs are saying, let's fuck these dungeons in particular, checking off a grocery list of bullshit magic stuff until we either get the thing that we want, or, right, we roll randomly the particular item we want, or we get the material we need to get someone else or ourselves to make that thing. So instead of killing monsters to get the gear, to kill monsters to get the gear, you're killing monsters to get the stuff to combine together to make the gear. This is the difference between like making a legendary item and just rolling some fat perps, right? And these adventures, these kinds of adventures, are the stuff of legend. And if you think about it, they allow us to engage in the lore of the world. The reason that the Apology of Emperor Fey is a +2 Warhammer is because someone off screen ages ago went on a bunch of adventures to get the crap that they needed to craft said apology. And this is great grist for your adventure mill, right? But here's the thing. While you can base entire campaigns around that stuff, maybe you shouldn't, because no matter how much breath of a fish or spittle of a bird you collect, there's only going to be one Gleipnir. You know, you can spend all of levels 5 to 8 trying to get the mats you need to build the crap that you want, but by the time you finally get it done, do you still even want it? And is it worth the effort? because mechanically, magical items scale in funny ways, and they're an easy way to accidentally fuck up the balance of your campaign. You can get them too early, right? Hand out an item too early, and it really screws with the game. Or in this case, you can end up in a situation where the GM is being too stingy, or you're on this quest that's going to take too long, and you're going to end up with enough and make the game too hard. If you want a +1 sword now, and you go out on a quest for it, you're probably going to be high enough level that you're going to need a +2 sword by the time you get the +1 sword. So I feel like all of this, as with much of the way D&D is structured, puts all the pressure on the game master, right? Even if the motivation, the action part is on the PCs, it's really just another quest. And as such, it might or may not be fun for your particular group. Outside of D&D, though, there are definitely some problems that crop up with the whole pursue a project thing. And I think that there are games that fix it or handle it in an interesting way. You know, look at, maybe not the core book, but if you look, every fantasy role-playing game from Shadowrun to Earthdawn, which is maybe a bad example. That's like saying from the letter A to the letter B. But from you know, RuneQuest, Shadowrun, Dungeons and Dragons, Burning Wheel, Torchbearer, Dungeon World. Every game eventually has its own how to make magic items sub-rules. And so, yes, you can take from those if you want to. But outside even this genre, I think that there are solutions and problems inherent in the way that magic items get made in a game, or items, or fuck it, player projects, right? Now, I'm going to say some real nice stuff about Blades in the Dark in about 2 minutes. So if you like Blades in the Dark, get ready for some platitudinal reassurances that you're playing a well-designed game. Get ready. I'm going to pat you on the back. Just warm up that space between your shoulder blades. Here comes the pats. But first, I'm going to talk some shit about Apocalypse World. I know, frightening, right? Startling. I'm going to talk shit about Apocalypse World. So, actually, I'm going to talk shit about my experiences with Apocalypse World. I don't know that this is a problem with the game, but let's talk about it and we can work it out. So, let's talk about the Savvy Head, shall we? Let us talk about the Savvy Head. Now, I love the Savvy Head. I love the tinkering. I love the projects. I love it so much that we basically just stole the workshop move for wizards in Dungeon World. So we could have the characters do the whole, I want to make an item thing. This is the move I'm referring to. This is a direct quote. This is the move I'm referring to in Apocalypse World in 2nd edition. I'm going to read the whole thing. If you want something in Apocalypse World and you want to have a move to get it, here's the move you make. When you go into your workspace and dedicate yourself to making a thing or getting to the bottom of some shit, decide what, and tell the MC. The MC will tell you, sure, no problem, but, and then do one of 4 of the following. It's going to take hours, days, weeks, or months of work. First, you're going to have to get, build, fix, figure out blank. You're going to need blank to help you with it. It's going to cost a fuck ton of jingle. The best you're going to be able to do is a crap version, weak and unreliable. It's going to mean exposing yourself plus your colleagues to serious danger. You're going to have to add blank to your workplace. It's going to take several dozens, hundreds of tries. You're going to have to take blank apart to do it. The MC might connect them all with and, or might throw in a merciful or. Once you've accomplished the necessaries, you can go ahead and accomplish the thing itself. The MC will stat it up or spill or whatever it calls for. Big move, right? Ritual is the same in Dungeon World. You can literally say to the game master, I want this. It does not matter what it is. I want a rocket ship that will take me to Saturn. I want to kill the psychic maelstrom. I want to live forever. I want to, right? You can say anything that you want. And the GM will say to you, this is what it will cost you. Notice, the GM is not allowed to say no. Just think about that for a second. The GM is not allowed to say no. So this move is cool because it's powerful and it gives the player a self-motivated project that can and will come into conflict with a balancing act that is like fronts and scarcity and shit. And in a lot of ways, I think that this move is the core mechanism of the Apocalypse engine at play, right? Above and beyond even something like, defy danger or act under fire or act under pressure or whatever. There's a reason that move ends up in every game. Above and beyond that, what this move is doing is showing that this is a game about making statements about the world, constraining player and GM choice to create interesting moments. It's got that whole, what are you willing to do for it thing going? But I have never, in my entire experience with Apocalypse World, my nigh hundreds of hours of play, had a smooth, positive experience with it. I've had bits and pieces that feel okay, and I've played and I've emceed for Savvy Head characters lots of times, and invariably this move has ended up the thing only the Savvy Head gives a shit about, or the thing that the MC keeps forgetting to deal with, or the thing the Savvy Head started and forgot. I've just never really been able to make this move sing as part of the entire group energy that develops at play, right? Usually the Savvy Head is the only one that gives a fuck about this move, and it's hard to balance that against the aggressive pressure of momentum in Apocalypse World. So I don't know, maybe you've got stories about how the move has worked out in a super cool way, but like I have a really hard time making shit like it's going to take hundreds of tries or it's going to take months of work stick in a way that's dramatic and interesting, and not just being like, I can't say no, so I'm going to say, slow down, come back 100 times later, come back in 6 months, come back in 8 months, just shush, just work on it, right? And also as a player, the Savvy Head doesn't want to have to be like, hey, am I done yet? Cool, I spent an hour. Am I done yet? I try 5 more times. Am I done? Right? Like, I feel like it's a good start, and it's mechanically, as a game design thing, very cool, but I haven't had it ever fit into a narrative properly. So I've sort of filed the Savvy Head stuff away in my head after we did Dungeon World, and I think it has a place there, but in the same way, on screen it's kind of boring, because I think people who are not me are having a good time with it, unstructured though I feel that it is. And then Blades in the Dark came out. Blades in the Dark has 2 things that I think make this whole DIY, craft it yourself project thing sing like a choir of angels who are all Freddie Mercury. Downtime, motherfucking countdown clocks. Now, let's not bullshit. Apocalypse World has clocks, but they're not countdown to success completion clocks. Most of the time, they are countdown until you are fucked clocks. In Blades, if a player says to the GM, I want to craft a magical knife that will cut a hole in the ghost field, you can say, nice. Start a clock, put 8 segments on it. And each downtime that they have an opportunity to choose to expend their resources, they can just work on the damn knife. And this is mechanical, right? In as much as it is narratives. Clocks in Apocalypse World tick down to midnight when everybody dies. In Blades, clocks tick forward. We want clocks to finish on our character sheet. The thing is, too, you can narratively establish more or less complex means, too. Maybe make the knife is a clock that doesn't unlock until get the ingredients is complete. Each ingredient is the slice of a 4-part pie. The ingredients specifically do not matter in Blades, right? If you decide you have 4 ingredients that must be collected, you can ask the player what they are, and they can make the downtime roll, right? The player can be like, if I want to make a bracelet that so long as I wear it, I cannot get drunk, the first thing I need is hair of a dog, right? Hair of a dog, what bit me? So I need to go get my ass bit by a dog and then steal some hair, and that's my first slice. The GM doesn't even have to make that stuff up, because honestly, frankly, to be fair, the whole Gleipnir thing, spittle of a bird, it's it's not always that much fun to make up, and it's hard to be clever and make up all this stuff. So you can just turn it over to the players and be like, players, just do it. Just make up your own thing. Blades fixes the whole stupid problem of only the savvy head cares about the project by making it an outside the adventure thing and letting players work on it alone or together, but not derailing the game, right? Players can contribute to the knife project by making it a gang project, right? Easy. And blessedly, this kind of subsystem can be added to D&D without too much trouble. Or your game of choice, like, I don't know, Harnmaster or Torg. Okay, maybe not Torg. I take that back. I don't remember Torg well enough. Does Torg have magic item creation rules? Anyway, during a period of downtime, each player can pursue a goal. You can attach that goal to rolls and checks, do some vignette scenes of role-playing, advance the counter forward, and when you fill in the counter, the players get the thing that they want. It's a pretty modular system. You can mix and match it with quests. You can be like, all right, getting the items is downtime. Creating the item requires you travel to the Forge of Stars. That's a quest. You can mix and match, right? And I think that's pretty much your main choice, right? You can either make the game quest for item to be the thing that's on screen. And if so, go ahead and just say it. Just be like, the game is about this now. Or if you want things to be more backgroundy, elide, compact, or just move past that stuff. What's hard to do is trying both at once, mixing regularly scheduled save the world bullshit with, also, while you're out saving the universe, can you pick me up some pure elemental fire for this wand of pyrotechnics I'm working on? Okay, thanks. Now, someone in chat suggested the thing that I was about to suggest. It can be really fun and create some interesting stuff to be like, all right, you're all first level characters. You're in the employ of a wizard. This wizard has asked you to retrieve these 4 magical items from the world so that he can craft his own magic item. You are basically his hirelings. You go out in the world and do this. But by the time you're high enough level from getting those 4 items, you come back, you might start thinking, this keep on the Borderlands is looking pretty ripe. Maybe it's time to pluck it from the Tree of Civilization and loot it for ourselves. Maybe it's time to go convince those hobgoblins that live in the Cave of Chaos they should serve us instead, right? You can create some fun narratives around the economy of magic items. But the thing is, as with anything and everything, make sure you ask your players what they prefer. Do they want to do quest for item, or do they want to elide that stuff? Build whatever structure, steal from whatever other games, based on those choices. Your design goal in this instance is to satisfy you and your group and to make the choices that will create maximum party fun time for them based on their feedback. Also, just like try Blades. Seriously, you can play a character whose main story jam is being an awesome drug dealer, but secretly you're trying to get married. It's so much fun. Downtime romance pursuits. Downtime trying to get the best hat. Like, it's so good. It's fantastic. It allows the characters to show us what they care about outside of the group dynamic. And I think if you're going for magic item crafting that isn't the core of gameplay, that's what I would suggest that you do. I would suggest you try that. Try that out.
So I'm playing the Burning Wheel with 2 players. It's going really well. The system's great. Everyone's having a great time. We're always talking about how much fun the game is and all of that. But we do tend to do a thing where we split the party a hell of a lot. It's the second time that the 2 player characters will be split. And we were thinking that maybe there's something we can do about this. It's not that we're completely against splitting the party or that we have a bad time when it happens. It's just we think it could be done better. So we thought of some ideas, but I just wanted to hear what you had to think of it. Should it be done? And if so, what's the best way to split the party? Bonus question. What systems most lend themselves to scattered parties? Thanks.
So, the Maxim Eternal, brought forth from the arcane past of Dungeons and Dragons, has always been don't split the party. Like, it's right up there with don't make a deal with a dragon, right? Never split the party. Don't split the party. The reason for this to have entered our collective RPG unconsciousness is because in Dungeons and Dragons, the party is a kind of gestalt entity. Its success and survival requires that all parts operate together. Game balance required that a composed party stick together, overcoming encounters as a unit. In a lot of ways, individual characters in Dungeons and Dragons mechanically matter less than solid party composition. You on your own may be able to cast healing spells, but you are merely an implement of a larger thing that can tank damage, deal damage, disarm traps, etc. Splitting the party was paramount to, like, separating the saucer section. You're not going to win any firefights with the Romulans that way. However, outside of Dungeons and Dragons, splitting the party is just good sense. It allows you, instead of constantly painting with the same brown everyone at once palette, you get to mix and match characters, highlighting and illustrating their interesting bits as a matter of contrast. A scene with Rithius the Holy and Fargle Filthface traversing the Hall of Sweaty Touching is going to be very different from the one in which Rithius pursues his beloved Davros the Chaste. Right? Same Rithius, different aspects of the characters. So in Burning Wheel, which you were playing, consider that it's almost imperative to split the PCs up sometimes. Especially if the game is one that's focused on intrigue, right? The characters aren't a party of adventurers. They're not one unit, right? I am not playing the left hand while you are the right hand, and yes, I did that backwards. Someone else is a head, right? We're not Voltron in Burning Wheel. We have our own stuff going on that may not include each other all the time. Apocalypse World, Sagas of the Icelanders, Vampire the Masquerade, any game with, like, interconnected but not necessarily allied characters, they're all going to thrive on scene framing that doesn't just jam everybody arbitrarily in a room together. This is healthy and normal, and it can be a lot of fun, provided that people you're playing with are not, you know, like a bunch of selfish babies who feel the need to be in every single scene for it to be worth it for them to be at the table. Fate does this in a neat way by giving out-of-scene players, an opportunity to focus on the aspects of the characters in the scene, creating an economy of micro-game mastery. Tenra Bancho Zero, too, has an audience aspect I've found super fun. I didn't think of it when I was coming up with notes for this, but Lady Snow just mentioned in chat Marvel Heroic, the Cortex RPG, specifically has characters who work better solo than they do as a team. It very much encourages, mechanically, the splitting and reorganizing of character groups. Any game that gives out-of-scene characters a thing to do to help them keep from lapsing into smartphone ogling boredom or disruptive buffoonery is going to facilitate and assist in your split party situation. I always love that Apocalypse World hit this thing from both ends, right? On the one hand, the GM has this move, separate them, because it's a good and useful tool, and Apocalypse World is awesome at taking good and useful and making it, you know, the rules of the game. And on the other hand, if a player just desperately can't bear the thought of being left out, narratively, they can just take Bonefeel and, like, I don't know, show the fuck up out of nowhere like an RKO. So what's about to complicate the situation and just really fuck the whole thing up is that you're only playing with 2 players. Like you and 2 other people. Which means separating them puts you in a position of saying, hey, player 1, I just need some time alone with player 2. If you could just sit there and shut it and watch for a minute. There's a threesome analogy here, but I'm not going to make it. It's hard because you're still doing exactly what you were doing before, but now you're saying you're out of the action for a bit. And the palette hasn't gained any new color. You've just left a color out, which isn't bad exactly. And principally, the advice still stands. If we envision all NPCs and PCs to be fictional elements on equally interesting footing, a scene, sans PC1, is different than one in which PC1 is present. However, at the social level, this can be tough because Burning Wheel doesn't have mechanisms keeping that player engaged, right? It can suck pretty bad being the one left out. If you're finding that to be a problem, and maybe you're not, doesn't really sound like you're having a problem with this, you can try to fix it by framing scenes that are either already inclusive of both characters, connected to both characters. So maybe they include a relationship, something about a life path, something that a belief or an instinct in some way, even if the character isn't present, right? Include things that they believe things about. Or just keep those scenes quick, right? Frame, do a thing, roll some dice, move on. Don't let the scenes linger. Don't chew the scenery. Focus on a single element of play, a roll, whatever, and just go with it. Right? In a scene, in Burning Wheel, all that matters is the rolls. Really. Because you want to make tests so that you can get Artha for your beliefs, so your beliefs can evolve, so your character can continue to be interesting to play. Set the scene, make the roll, move the fuck on, right? The other thing you can do is make sure that your situation fits with the kind of play that you want. If you want to include everybody in every scene, if you want both players around all the time, just set the situation like a buddy cop movie, right? Give them fictional reasons to be together all the time. Make them one of those annoying couples that once they start dating, they are never apart. You're good to go. Situational, right? Set that up. It sounds to me like a lot of your question is, hey, if this was a problem, which it's not, and that's a nice place to be, but for folks who do this kind of splitting and feel like it's a problem, hopefully this is a good place to start. Now, I wanted to share an anecdote here about how I ran an Apocalypse World game with 2 players. One was a Hocus and one was a Hard Holder. And the whole game, they were basically just enemies who never really directly interacted except through their NPCs. And how it was a big challenge, but with the right players, in the right situation, in the right system, it can definitely be done. But then I realized that that's the whole anecdote. If it's working, you ought not to change it. And if it's not working, make sure that the players and your game are cooperating with you, and just try to keep your scenes punchy. Don't be scared to say, all right, that's the scene. Let's move on. What's the next thing?
G'day, Mr. Coble. I have a problem with speaking as NPCs as a GM. Too often I find myself speaking in the third person in order to get across information rather than engaging in direct conversation. I find myself exposition dumping to my players. I find this particularly difficult playing games like Dark Heresy, as it's a very investigation-themed game. I notice this is something you seem to excel at as a GM. Do you have any advice on how to develop this skill?
Look at this clever, look at you, Tom, you clever bastard, throwing in that compliment at the end. Yeah, I'll answer your question, Tom. So I'm a bit divided on this because I think that maybe you've got some mutually exclusive goals at play here. Like on the one hand, a scene with an NPC in it shouldn't generally exist for some primarily meta-narrative purpose. What I mean by that is that if Jinx and Drez go to visit a contact, we know that they're hitting the streets to accomplish the acquisition of some material or fulfill a goal. The narrative purpose is clear because the mechanisms and the intent of the players makes it so. We know why they're going to see the contact. The NPC in this question is, for me as a GM, going to be an opportunity to illustrate something about the world, the culture of the NPC themselves, etc. But that opportunity is a meta goal. It's a goal about the real goal. The real goal being making the game feel real, right? Making the game world feel real, fulfilling the rules of the game, playing the game. But the meta goal is to illustrate the world, right? The evocation of the fictional space the game takes place in, the interrogation of its details, but that goal is outside of play. It should be occurring to better deepen our understanding of this shared meta space, this mental space that we're in. What I think that we can run into is when the meta goal becomes the goal, our problem here as the GM is that we focus on the wrong stuff, right? When we have an NPC whose dialogue, dress, mannerisms, or whatever become not a matter of fleshing out the details of the world, but some requirement for future progress, it undermines those descriptions as a meta-narrative tool. In Dark Heresy, the goal of interrogating an NPC might be to learn something that they know. This should be straightforward, should be PC-driven. They meet the interrogatee, they interrogate them, we all learn something, and they move on to the next clue. Problematically, though, Dark Heresy particularly doesn't have any proper or any investigative structural mechanisms. So every interaction with an NPC is this loosey-goosey, maybe they know something, maybe they don't, game of chicken between the PCs and the GM, with the PCs, players desperately trying to solve the game, and the GM trying to give them just enough detail that they've earned, hoping they figure it out. So sometimes you end up in a position where you're like, you see a man in a purple hat, and he says, "Hello, Inquisitors," and takes off his purple hat, wringing it in his hands. It's very purple against his white skin. "Oh, I don't know anything about heretics," he says, hat clenched like a bunch of grapes in his long fingers. Long, awkward pause. Nothing? No? His hat is purple, guys! It's a purple hat! Do you remember? The cultists wore purple? Jesus Christ, where have you been? And everyone's looking at you like, what, really? Like, I don't... Do you know anything about heretics? This is what happens sometimes. We build these mysterious mysteries, and when we try to subtly help our players infer the details, and they fail, we end up speaking through the... Instead of speaking through the NPCs, we speak for them, right? I think the inverse problem here, the inverse of that, is when you mention a purple hat and the players latch onto it as if it's the only thing that matters, right? The nobleman takes off his hat. It's a deep shade of purple, sets it down on the bench and begins to speak with you. You notice sweat beading on his brow as he takes a drink from his wine. This is where you start to see the Illuminati symbols appearing in your player's eyes. Be like, wait, purple wine, purple hat, noble, sweat, heretics. Yes, the vineyard, to the vineyard, right? That's the flip side of that. Sometimes, and fundamentally, I think, God, this is where it gets complicated. We'll talk about this in a minute. In a game about investigation, I think that there's opportunities for the GM to acknowledge that they are a player in the same game as the PCs, and the NPCs are not them. I think this is true of all games, but in an investigation game where you kind of want to acknowledge that things aren't as they seem, and it's not or shouldn't be a situation of withholding shit, there are tactics that you can pull to be fun and clever and a little coy about this. You can be real with your players. I learned this trick from a game that is a much better version of Dark Heresy than Dark Heresy is. I'm going to give you a second. Do you know what game I'm referring to? Taught me a good trick about being honest about NPCs, and it's a better game that does Dark Heresy than Dark Heresy does. I'm going to read to you. Let me describe it. Here's a quote from the book. Sometimes the NPC wants to lie instead. That's okay. I have the NPC lie. You've watched movies. You can always tell when you're watching a movie who's lying and who's telling the truth. And wouldn't you know it, most of the time the players are looking at me with these skeptical looks, and I give them this sly little nod that says, yep, she's lying. And they get these great, mean, tooth-showing grins, because when someone lies to them, whoo boy does it not work out. If you guessed Dogs in the Vineyard, congratulations, you earn a biscuit. Eat it in good health. But seriously, read Dogs. It's got some age spots in the design, but there's so much good stuff for folks trying to run games like Dark Heresy and struggling. Honestly, I do this now like across the board, and I know that a lot of NPCs in games get treated this way by GMs I know and respect, right? It's so much fun to say to a player when the player is like, where are the drugs? And he's like, I don't know anything about the drugs. And you look at them like you didn't just say that, right? It's like you pretend like they're another person that isn't you. And you're like, oh, he's lying to you. Yeah. What are you going to do about that? Yeah, I don't know about those drugs. Yeah, I should go, right? It's so much fun as the player to be like, wait a second, we all know he's lying. This is where the like idea of metagaming can get in the way of fun. Don't worry about that, right? Just say it. Say it and do it. Just be honest, because your job as the game master, even in Dark Heresy, is not to withhold information. It's to challenge the players to achieve the best results out of the inevitable end of the game, which is to say they discover the heresy. Because if that's in question, the game is not fun. It's how do they handle the heresy? Not, oh, well, I guess the heretics got away. Like, but again, the game itself is not designed very well, so it is not helping you. I don't want to be a jerk, but stop playing Dark Heresy. It's a bad game. It's a reskinned Warhammer Fantasy, which is a fun game. Warhammer Fantasy 2nd is a fun game because it doesn't have these problems. It wants to be about something, but it's actively fucking with you here. This is the same advice that I would give to anyone trying to play a game of intrigue using Vampire the Masquerade. You can do it. You can have fun doing it, but please stop. Just try a different game. Play Dogs with the same group. Seriously. Anyway, bringing it back to the point, as GMs, I think we want to be expository. We want to show off the cool ideas we have. It's our right as players. We deserve the opportunity to talk about the cool things that we have in our head. That's what a role-playing game is for. Telling cool stories with your friends. We sink time and energy in our NPCs and we want to exposit. And we are thwarted when we feel like that stuff isn't getting across. Like an NPC who is supposed to stand in for the allegorical nature of abuse of power just gets treated like any other random idiot NPC. Games thwart us too, when they force us to hide the cool shit behind investigatory mechanisms for the game to even work. If I have a cool thing that I want to tell you about an NPC, I will use the character to show you that thing. The way they speak, the way they act, how the world treats them, everything about them is meaningful. Now, that doesn't mean it's meaningful to the plot. It doesn't mean that the purple hat is always... Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. But everything that I do and say about the characters in the game is me telling the players in the audience something about the world. I'm not going to hide that shit behind an insight check. Having the players engage mechanically is icing on the cake in this case, not the cake itself. But this is just me being proud, right? This is pride talking. I love making NPCs, making them interesting, embodying them so that the players, and maybe more importantly, the audience, can understand the world that they're a part of is my favorite thing. Every NPC I create does that, says something about the world, and that's why they exist for me. I have to trust that my players will understand that. And that in the games that I play, that stuff isn't going to hold the game back or require that the game continues forward, right? The reason Dark Heresy is a bad game is that the mechanisms of the game demand that if the players fail a roll, you don't get to tell them the cool shit that you've made up. Unless you play it in a very specific way that bends its rules. There are games that do Dark Heresy better than Dark Heresy, right? I want to play a game where I can be clear and open about the things that my NPCs think and feel and are. I talk about the 3 things principle of NPCs a lot, so I'm not going to go into it like deeply here. But when you're creating the 3 things for your NPCs, think about what those things say, not just about them, but the world at large. Then trust that people will pick that up. Trust that you can be more subtle than you think you can, that your players will understand, even if it takes them a while to get to that revelatory moment. Try not to engage the meta-narrative if you can, that why are we having this conversation? What can I impart? Let the game do that. And it's hard, I know. Because this is kind of deep-level GM stuff, right? I struggle with it a lot, but having a clear idea of what an NPC is about and their place in the world, and then just acting and speaking naturally as them, letting that detail seep out on its own through their voice, it's going to be so much more rewarding than forcing it. Sometimes we want to scream at our players about the big obvious purple hat, but if your game doesn't hinge on the hat, just let that fucking hat exist, you know? I'm trying to give concrete advice and not be obtuse here, but I think it's part of the craft that's very subtle and takes time and practice. Let go of the idea that your players have to understand the point and just play the character. You'll learn things about your world and the people in it just by organically embodying them. And that's the big reward here. Not leading your players down some breadcrumb trail to MacGuffin Town. When a PC says or does something and you react in the moment as a character and you have that realization, wait, the reason that they're saying this is because they feel this, and that moment surprises you, that's the real gold. So play a different game, even just to learn the difference, right? Everyone who has ever played Dark Heresy needs to play Dogs in the Vineyard just to compare and contrast. So play a different game. Try Dogs. Do a one-shot. Keep at it. Give yourself space to just be the NPC. Don't think too hard about whether the characters are getting what they're supposed to get out of the interaction. Just be them in the world. And with practice and attention, you will get better at it. Even if narratively and mechanically, it doesn't matter to the game. It will make you have more fun as a game master just being in that place more intensely. So thanks for coming, everybody. This has been episode 49 of Office Hours. Big ups to everybody who submitted questions today. If you would like to join that august organization and become part of the question askers of Office Hours, you can go to my website, www.adam-koble.com. Click on the Office Hours link, fill out the form, submit your voice, or have someone else do it for you if you're shy, and I will answer your questions in the order in which they were received. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Next episode, big episode 50. We will see you then, either live on Twitch or later on YouTube. Bye, everybody.